y'all? Hope y'all are doing marvelous as always. And welcome back to next whiteboard session here. And we're going to talk about the different dieting types, right? This is actually going to be a two-part video, right? So we're going to talk about the dieting types, right? So the different types of dieters will be part one. Part two will be the actual different types of diets that people, tend to follow up on. So these are right here, just the different types of dieters. And we're gonna go ahead and get started. Vegan dieting. So most of y'all already know what this one is. Okay, it's probably one of the better types of diets that can be followed up on. Obviously, there's, just like anything, there's disadvantages as well as benefits. Okay, so anyone who follows that diet, they typically don't eat any kind of animal or animal byproducts. None of that stuff is consumed. Okay, so typically the foods you'll see a lot of vegan dieters eat will be legumes. If you don't remember what legumes are, that's going to be your different types of beans. So that'd be lentils, that's going to be black beans, pinto beans, chickpeas, stuff like that. Even like red bean, kidney beans, right? Things like that. So those are different types of legumes. Then, you may see them eat tofu, tempeh, edamame, and of course veggies and rice and stuff like that. I mean, those aren't, if it's not an animal or animal byproduct, then essentially it's something that can be eaten by a vegan dieter. Let me go into the benefits first. So the benefits of vegan dieting, there's been studies that would show that eating a vegan diet can, essentially help lower your LDL cholesterol as well as raise HDL, which, as I've talked about this before, but HDL is your good cholesterol, high density lipoproteins, and your LDL is the bad, your low density lipoproteins. So vegan dieting can help reverse some of the, plaque that's in your body, right? From, all the fatty acids that chain together. It can help reverse some of your ailments too. It's funny, there was it's a documentary, I guess is what it is, on Netflix. It's called What the Health. If none of y'all have seen it, then I definitely advise y'all to go watch it. But it's basically this guy, his name is Kip, and he goes and, just talks to a bunch of different doctors and MDs and things like that. Like, he pretty much gets advised by doctors on how, certain types of processed meats and things like that are, equivalent to smoking cigarettes, right? There's carcinogens in some of the things that we eat. In the documentary, there was I think two people that had ailments. One lady had a walker. Another person had a bunch of meds they were taking and stuff like that for issues. They found that towards the end of the documentary, those patients got switched to a vegan diet. All of a sudden, over time, of course, the lady no longer needed a walker. And all those medications were able to get thrown out by the other person. So, vegan dieting has been shown to help reverse a lot of the the ailments, injuries. Helps reverse some of the plaque that's in your body that can chain together and tend to build up against your artery walls, leading to high cholesterol. So vegan dieting has its benefits, but it also has its disadvantages too. For people who follow a vegan diet, because they don't eat animal or animal byproducts, there are certain nutrients that they may be missing out on, certain vitamins and minerals that they tend to miss out on. Okay, so it's important that vegans, you may need to look into supplementation for certain vitamins and minerals, like iron, for example. Most of us know iron, is pretty common in meats, right? Meat it's got a sufficient amount of iron. That's probably the biggest, most quickest way you can get iron intake is through meats. So when you're not eating meats, you got to make sure that you are eating other foods that do have iron in it, like fortified foods. Certain grains may be enriched with, iron and some other B vitamins that also may need supplementation for vegan dieters as well. There's certain B vitamins, maybe some zinc, things that you typically could get out of the red meats and seafoods, eggs, poultry. Those nutrients may get missed out on because they're not eaten. So supplementation is typically a big thing with vegan dieters. There are certain proteins that are complete and certain proteins that are incomplete. Now, legumes, they tend to be incomplete proteins. They have protein in them, right, but they're incomplete. Now, just a little refresher, incomplete proteins are basically proteins that do not provide all of the essential amino acids that our body needs to create and complete our, amino acid profile. Our genetic coding is of course different, so no amino acid profile is really the same between two people, but certain amino acids play a part in transferring, or rather transporting blood, and oxygen to the tissues, lungs, liver, kidneys. There's amino acids, like our profile needs to be complete with both essential and non-essential amino acids. The non-essential amino acids is basically, those are the amino acids our body can produce on its own. It doesn't need help from food. The essential amino acids, however, we need food for that. Our body can't synthesize that on its own. So legumes, taking me back to like black beans, lentils, kidney beans, chickpeas, stuff like that, they have protein in them, but they're not complete sources of protein. So oftentimes, there are vegan dieters. I actually know of a couple who are told by their doctors and nutritionists that they need to eat more protein. Well, that would be the reason why, because they don't eat animal products. Eating animal products is the quickest way that you can complete your protein, your amino acid profile. It's the quickest way you can get protein, because it has a complete profile. Any animal product you can think of, that being seafood, meat, beef, veal, pork, any animal product has, amino acids, enough amino acids to complete your entire profile. They're complete, basically. So if you're going to be eating incomplete sources, it's important to essentially somehow turn them complete. One way you can do that is by taking two incomplete sources and making them complete. So as an example, we got legumes, right? And then we have, say, veggies or rice. If you eat any combination of the two, you can then turn two incomplete proteins into a complete source. So the best example would be rice and beans. You know what I'm saying? Like rice and beans is the best example right there. That's the best combination of, incomplete proteins that you can eat to turn them into complete sources. Now, tofu, tempeh, and edamame, because they're derived from soy, and soy is a complete protein, that's not a concern there. Tofu, tempeh, and edamame, those are complete protein sources. It's just, to be mindful of the proteins that you do eat, right? Because you don't eat animal products, you could be at risk for losing out on minerals and nutrients, vitamins, and you could also be at risk because you could be at risk for protein deficiency, which, is a macronutrient that's very important to our bodies. Next thing we have is the Lacto-Vegetarian. Now, this one is all the rest of these here, well, going up to the Lacto-Ovo. So you have Lacto-Veg, Ovo-Veg, and then Lacto-Ovo Vegetarian. These three, they share similarities, but essentially the differences between them is, one may be able to eat one thing and then the next one may not, right? It may just be flip-flop. So as an example, Lacto-Vegetarian, they typically don't eat any animal or animal byproducts, but they can eat dairy. Because of that though, they tend to have similar issues to vegans. They may need supplementation for certain, vitamins and minerals. The Ovo-Vegetarian, the difference here is, unlike the Lacto-Vegetarian, the Ovo-Vegetarian can eat eggs, but they typically don't do dairy or meat. Okay, so they can eat eggs, and because of that, the Ovo-Vegetarian is less likely to see losses in vitamins and minerals, because eggs have minerals. Certain egg products especially have, B vitamins in them, have zinc, like, the B12 especially, when I talk about B vitamins. Certain eggs do have those. There's even certain eggs that have certain brands or products of eggs that even have iron in them, believe it or not. So, that's the difference here. The Ovo-Veg is less likely to see that loss, unlike the vegan and the Lacto-Vegetarian. Same thing with the Lacto-Ovo Vegetarian. They can eat dairy and eggs, but they don't do meat, poultry, or fish. Okay, now because they can eat dairy and eggs, that combination allows them to be able to also see less of a loss in vitamins and minerals. So, there's that too. Of course, dairy products, most of us know what that is. I mean, eggs is dairy. Of course, milk, right? Ice cream, but, ice cream isn't necessarily nutritious, but they can still eat it, right? Like, they can still eat ice cream too. We're getting into the more common types now of dieter types. So we're gonna start with the Pescatarian. Now, Pescatarian, that's a dieting type that I actually, believe it or not, I followed for a little while. But for me, it was just kind of hard to, weed out meat altogether. So I went back to the Flexitarian, which is on the other side. I'll get into that in a minute. But Pescatarian, it's derived from the Spanish word pescado, which means fish. Pescatarian can eat seafood, fish, of course, dairy, as well as eggs. They typically don't really eat meats. They don't typically eat like the beef, the pork, the chicken, the veal, the game. You know what I'm saying? They don't typically eat things like that. Now, because of the pescatarian really eating more fish than anything else, they can be at risk for mercury poisoning, because some of y'all may know, some of y'all may not, but certain types of fish, has mercury in it, right? And it's usually like the mackerel, certain types of fish like that. And if you eat it enough, the trace amounts, of course, can become major. That's why you want to be mindful about how much fish you eat if you're going to follow a pescatarian diet. Okay, fish is good, right? Seafood, fish especially, it's always good, especially the salmon, the mackerel, the tuna. Those are the types of fish that's recommended if you're going to follow a pescatarian type diet, or if you just need to get omega-3 fatty acids in, which is another benefit here to the pescatarian diet. You get your omega-3 fatty acids, which can of course help with, reducing your LDL, raising your HDL, and can even start to promote, some healthy fat loss, right? It can promote, a little bit of, I'll say, moderate weight loss, should you eat it enough. Pollotarian, right? Now, the suffix word here being pollo, which is Spanish for chicken. A pollotarian can eat dairy, eggs, and chicken. Now, the only problem is though, they may still need supplementation, as you can imagine, for zinc, B12, and iron. Why, you might ask? Well, it's good, but it's not exactly meat, right? The types of things you can get in meat, like say a steak or ground beef, even ground turkey, things like that, you don't always get in chicken, right? Zinc is typically found in meats, right? Especially red meat, steak, roast. You may miss out if you're just eating a bunch of chicken. Now, if you're eating the type of eggs that do have zinc, like for example, and they, unfortunately, right now, this is taken off the shelves because there's a recall on this, but I used to eat these eggs, egg beaters, right? The egg beaters, egg whites. I used to get the liquid cartons before they decided to recall them, because somehow there was a batch that ended up with a chemical compound in them that was used in cleaning solutions. So they had to take them off the shelves. But in egg beaters, egg whites, for example, it's fortified, meaning it's enriched with vitamins and minerals. Minerals and vitamins such as B12, zinc, iron, and some of the other B vitamins too, thiamine, folic acid, niacin, and of course you got your calcium, right? Calcium, as you can imagine, comes from dairy products. Like if you drink milk, milk's got calcium in it. Of course, eggs, cheese has calcium in it. That's a dairy product. So any of these dieting types that eats dairy products, one less thing you have to worry about is calcium. Unfortunately for vegans though, and any other dieting type that does not eat dairy or meat, or specifically dairy, they miss out on calcium. And as you know, calcium is important for our bones. It's important to maintain our bone structure, right? So that we don't get brittle and weak in our bones, we don't end up getting osteoporosis. That's why supplementation sometimes is important for those that miss out on those types of foods. Now, last but not least, here we have the Flexitarian, and this one probably more so aligns with what I eat. The Flexitarian is mostly plant-based, but they do make room for the animal-based products. It's pretty much a nice combination of everything. Okay, so it's mostly plant-based, but they do eat fish, poultry, and seafood, so they can make room for pretty much everything else. Maybe even some meats too. This might be the most common dieting type. Reason being is because most people, unless of course they're vegan or vegetarian of sorts, or a pescatarian or what have you, most people do eat a good combination of all of these things. Unless of course you're also like a straight meat eater, which you follow the carnivore diet. That'll be covered in part 2, by the way. But unless you follow that type of dieting, the Flexitarian can pretty much eat everything. You get your good mixture of, vegetables, you get your good mixture of carbs. So like, maybe you eat rice, potatoes, things like that. And you get, your meats. So you have no qualms about eating vegan type foods. You have no qualms against eating legumes or tofu or tempeh, edamame, You got no qualms about eating dairy, so eggs, cheese even. You got no qualms about eating fish. You got no qualms about, eating chicken, right? Most of that is covered in here, in the Flexitarian. I guess the word flex, prefix word flex, helps you to be able to understand that this is a dieting type that essentially has a little bit of flex in how they eat. So that's pretty much gonna be it, y'all. I wanted to cover this because, there's a lot of dieting types out there, and, for my meal prep sessions, I try to encompass all of these, or at least, if not all of them, definitely at least most of them. I try to encompass most of these dieting types right here. So like my meal preps, you may see where I'll make teriyaki tofu or teriyaki tempeh, or maybe I'll make lentil curry. Those are, of course, the vegan type recipes. But I also do have recipes for chicken. I have recipes for fish. I have recipes for ground beef, ground turkey. I got recipes, for steak. So I try to be nice and well-rounded, because I don't want to leave any dieting type out, especially since I'm a person who essentially eats, just about everything that you can think of encompassed by these dieting types. So that's gonna be it, y'all. Part 2, I'm gonna go over the types of diets themselves. So I'm gonna go over like the gluten-free diet, the paleo diet, the keto diet, the carnivore diet that I briefly mentioned. That's what's gonna be covered in part 2. So I had to break this up a little bit so that it's not one long video, I'll catch y'all on the next one. I hope y'all enjoyed this, and I hope y'all enjoyed the rest of y'all day, whatever time it is for you that you're seeing this. And take care, until next time.